Welcome back, everyone, to Blender. I'm your host, the Housecode Gamer, and today, yeah, I have not been as busy as you think I have been. Vid work and all that. Kinda had to get back to making vids. End of the year and all that, but I do have a few models because, unfortunately, while I have also been making vids, I've also gotten back into the STO work. And you know what it's like, waiting for the gamma things to finish off. So, with that in mind, we have more than a few things here. And a few of these things do not look like the other. Yeah, we'll discuss those later, but first, quite possibly the ship I am the proudest of at the moment. If you recognize this particular design, congratulations. You recognize the Shangri-La class fast cruiser, which, if requested, will be placed into Home Trek. Though, to be perfectly honest, I'm going to be making these things publicly available because, well, nobody wants to make these things publicly available for anybody to use. It's always private models and private everything. What if someone who is making an excellent mod wants access to good models? But is kind of restricted by everything else. So, yeah, I'm pretty much going open policy. Just credit me and, well, you'll have to texture them yourself. But yeah, Shangri-La class fast cruiser. I haven't armed her yet, but I figure she doesn't need to be armed at the moment. And some people might actually port this into older games. Hint hint, anyone playing Orion Pirates? But then we move on to something a little more experimental. It's a rock. A big-ass rock. Really, it's an asteroid base. I kind of based it off the ones from Klingon Academy 2. This is on the personal request of the head dev of Home Trek. An asteroid base to replace their regular 1 style station from Enterprise. And what's more primitive, for lack of a better term, for a deep space station than, well, a bunch of things bolted to a rock. Then we go to the biggest station, the biggest things I've built yet, in terms of, actual size. This one is a TOS space station from Star Trek Infinite, and is approximately scaled to the size of ESD. Don't quote me on that, okay? Infinite's odd. Which brings us to the other one. Yes, this looks an awful lot like ESD. Except with a bunch of mushroom stuff tacked onto it. Fun fact. This ESD here, there's a reason I didn't put too much detail into it. It's just a core filler. For you see, it is designed, this specific little thing here, is designed to be bolted onto any Earth space dock style model, and just call it a day. Sure, it will have to be textured, but I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. Now we move on to the oddballs. The ones that make everyone's probably going, what the hell were you doing? And what the hell are they? Well, obviously they are derivatives of the F. This is an F-105 Thunder Chief, Chief, modified to Trek standards. I know, somebody's gonna be going, what are you smoking? And that is a very fair point to ask. But seeing as, Shapeways went belly up, and I do remember seeing an F-105 that had been trekked up and super deformed. Ugh. I decided, you know what, I'm just going to take the real-world aircraft and give it a few touch-ups. Gave it a, kind of impulse thruster here. It's kind of based on the TOS model. 2 Gatling phasers, and a couple of beam emitters there. And yes, these are Gatling phasers. You can tell from the fact that they have the phaser rifle emitters. And the air intakes are no longer air intakes, but they're photon torpedo launchers. It's kind of a fighter bomber. Same goes to the F-4 Phantom here. Vulcan chin gun? Hell no. Phaser beam emitter. Radome? Deflector dish. Air intakes? Quad photon torpedo launchers. I had a little bit too much fun making this thing, and I forgot the tail. Oh well, something to fix later. Yeah, it's even got a little tiny little radome here, kind of like the Federation class. And yes, I gave it warp engines just like the original. And then we move on to a, oh, screw it. Just get it out of your heads. Just say it. Launch Vipers. This is the Hornet fighter from SFB. Supposedly a derivative of the FA-18 Hornet. Even though it looks nothing like the Hornet. And because all I had was super deformed model pictures to look at, I just decided, you know what, it looks kind of like a Viper, I'm gonna go with it. Only thing I did was put in some chopped down warp nacelles. And from fighters, we go to, well, a Klingon cruiser. This is the Deathrite, the D-20. From Star Trek Legacy. And before anyone goes, I've seen the Deathrite, and a lot of you are going to be going, I've even modeled the Deathrite. That looks nothing like the Deathrite. Well, when you don't have orthographic views to work with, as well as, actually good shots, I think I did a pretty good job. I know it's not perfect, but until I get my hands on, the actual model, something I can just import into Blender, this is going to be the best I can do. And I'm not entirely sure how much of the markings were actual model and how much were paint. So there's a reason it's blank like this. And from the Klingons to their new enemies, the Romulans. Another Legacy import, the Harpy class. And yet another starship that I had very little documentation to work with. I hate it. I hate the fact that I have to work with such poor documentation. Now, if someone, had these things imported over to, say, Star Trek Online, I might have a little more to work with. Until then, I have this thing. And so will you. And now we come to a model that is in Home Trek, but well, is not in Star Trek Bridge Commander, the Jem'Hadar Strike Cruiser. Not much to say here. I didn't even need to model this for the Home Trek team. And there was some actually good documentation on this thing. It was just a pain in the rear end to model. I'm a little too used to TOS. And from pain in the rear end to model to, well, something actually enjoyable, we go to the Klingons and the Kavorcha class. I had to get a little creative on the interpretations here. I believe on the original these were just warp nacelles. What did I do instead? Well, let's see here. We have a Gatling disruptor cannon. You know, fires tiny little green balls of death. A heavy disruptor cannon. Sadly, it doesn't recoil, it just fires giant bolts of death. And a beam bank right around here. That way it can excel at long-range combat, mid-range combat, and just spew everything at close range. And obligatory photon torpedo launcher. I might model in a couple of extra forward-facing beam banks, but right now I'm happy with it. And so's the Home Trek dev. Oh boy. This one I actually modeled a lot earlier than the rest of them, but the Corral is something I'm particularly proud of for one reason. I managed to incorporate a lot of SFC, such as the Sword of Kahless, into a Star Trek Armada 2 model. Twin-barrel photon torpedo launchers, a smoothly integrated disruptor lance, far less bulky than the one on the Sword of Kahless, appropriately bulky nacelles, and a couple of aft torpedo tubes, as well as a few bulky nacelles. In short, I did my best to make sure this thing actually looked like it was, well, modernized. Hopefully we get to see something like it in STO. Hint, hint, cryptic. And finally, we come to the model I just finished. Look familiar? It's the USS Premonition from Star Trek Online. And Star Trek Armada, of course, but look, I'm just gonna be blunt here. I had to work from screenshots. Relatively good screenshots, but screenshots. Now, if I had access to the actual model, well, my ability to make this thing would be less, suspect. But it is what it is. And, honestly, it's actually pretty good in comparison to other models of the Premonition, which just looked like a sovereign with a cancerous tumor tacked on top. There's a reason I keep saying that the STO version of the ship is the gold standard of which all remasters should be based on. And yes, I even modeled in some phaser strips. Very crappy phaser strips, I will fully admit. But better than nothing, right? I mean, look at it. This isn't the first time I've modeled an STO starship. Though, I will be honest, it is a little bit blocky. But what can you do? At least it's still better than the original Armada version. That thing was just a Sovereign with a couple of extra things bolted on. But yeah. Once I remember what ships are which. I'm serious, I don't remember what's in my model packs. I will start uploading all of these things to ModDB. And hopefully you guys can play with them. In whatever mods or... hell, you can even use them for games if you like. These things especially are for RTSs or something like that. Look, all I care about is you have fun with them and I receive a little bit of credit. That's it. That's all. And hopefully you will enjoy them. House Coat Gaming, signing off.